So I'm going to continue talk on wise roads. Thank you, Kurt, and everyone else from LTAP talking about wise roads, and looking forward to continue working with you for that. But yeah, I'm talking wise roads, where it is right now and where the next phase is going for the project. So like Kurt said, Wise Roads project, the basic goal of it was to expand the existing NDAWN network in oil-producing counties. It was essentially a weather void in western North Dakota, very few stations, and to add this weather data and create a high-density weather network that the data from which could be used, particularly the rainfall data, to have very precise weight restrictions and reduce them in size and scope to target only the roads that really needed to be closed. And by doing this, by creating zones for restrictions like Montreal County created here just this summer, and overall reducing the number of roads that fall under weight restrictions from weather events. And then maximizing the benefit and from the investment by working with research partners like LTAP, as well as agriculture, farmers and ranchers, and industry as well. So going back to spring of 2019, this is a map of the NDAWN stations shown in green that were around at that time. And looking at that map, there's only 8 stations in the big 4 counties, and half of those were in Williams County itself. McKenzie and Dunn each only had 1 station. And looking at the 1 station, for example, in Dunn Center, was not representative whatsoever of the entire county of Dunn. And looking between the stations, it was up to 40, even 50 miles between a station and its nearest, the nearest station past it. So very sparse weather data available in this region. So Wise Roads went to fill those voids, and where we're at today, we're looking at 30 additional weather stations installed since the first stations were installed in June 2019. These are all shown in blue on the map. The big 4 counties now, 4 primary producing counties, have gone from 8 stations to 34 stations. And instead of looking at a spacing of around 40 miles, even 50 miles in some cases, now it's down to 12 to 20 miles. And in the core production area, it's closer to about 10 miles between stations instead, producing a high density weather data that's able to be used and have a better understanding of what is actually occurring in these locations. Just a bit of a breakdown showing the number of stations currently installed in each of the big 4 counties, as well as the number of stations installed. McKenzie County has had the most stations with 10. They are the largest county as well as the largest oil producing county. That's why they have the most. The other ones, 5 or 6 additional stations were installed with Wise Roads. And then the periphery stations, Billings County has 1 station installed, which was installed just recently. Bowman County as well has 1, and Burke has had 2 new stations installed. So looking ahead, the next step is the phase 4 of the project. This is shown as the orange circles on the map. Now with the stations we have currently, we've essentially reached saturation for most variables: temperature, wind, dew point, humidity, and there's not a whole lot more gained by having more recording that information. While there's still going to be differences, mainly due to topography, we have a very good idea of what is happening now with the additional 30 stations. However, there's still a need for more rain data. So phase 4 stations are going to be rain gauge and camera only sites. And think about it, rain events, thunderstorms oftentimes are only a few miles wide at most, and even widespread rain events oftentimes have embedded cores that are only a few miles wide. And these could still very easily miss the stations and we would have incomplete data. But with the phase 4, we'll have a very complete information and an understanding of the precipitation across the region. We're working with industry to place these at existing oil locations, whether it be an oil well or a disposal well. And we're doing that so we can connect to AC power. AC power, if we connect to that versus the solar setup that we typically have, this allows us to use a rain gauge with a heater on it. This is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. There's a couple heaters built into it that require AC power to heat it and keep it at 40 degrees. And with that, we can measure winter precipitation, snow and sleet, and have it melt and run through the rain gauge. So we have an idea of the precipitation that falls in the wintertime at these sites that we would otherwise be unable to measure. Currently, only 3 stations are able to measure winter precipitation. One on far northwestern North Dakota, north of Fortuna, and 2 of the original Wise Road stations, Hawkeye in northeast Mackenzie and Liberty in south central Montreal County. And these are important for winter precipitation, but also spring moisture. You have springs where it might warm up and the ground is already warm, the road is thawed out, but then you have a wet snow event. This happens March, April, or May, and the other rain gauges won't be able to measure the amount of moisture that is in that snowfall, but it's still going to have a major impact on the roadway system, whereas a winter precipitation all-season gauge will capture that moisture, as well as early season rains or freezing rain events, where other gauges that we have at the other sites will possibly still be frozen up from the winter. Another project that is going to have an impact in the region is the Upper Missouri River Basin project from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. You might have saw this. It was just announced here in the last week or so. This map shows the Missouri River Basin in North Dakota and the James River Basin, where the project will be located. NDAWN was awarded a $6.4 million 5-year contract as a part of this project. And it's part of a larger 5-state project, including North and South Dakota, Montana, Nebraska, and Wyoming. This project started back due to the floods in 2011, where they realized that they didn't have as good of a information network that they needed in the upstream of the Missouri River Basin. And they needed to measure, have a better understanding of the entire water system, including snow, groundwater, and rainfall. So as part of that project, there'll be about 20 new stations installed in North Dakota in the region shaded on the previous map. I'm expecting quite a few of them to be placed in southwestern North Dakota, outside of the Wise Roads area where the density has already been increased, particularly between Highway 22 and Missouri River. Probably see a few stations in that location especially. And then the brunt of the project in North Dakota, at least, will be upgrading existing stations. They don't have the grids decided yet, but it's going to be approximately a 20 to 25 mile spacing between stations that are upgraded. And with that, likely some Wise Road stations will be upgraded as they are in the project area. So those upgrades include an all-season rain gauge. This is shown on the screen as well. This is a more expensive version than I talked about prior in the phase 4 stations. And this one is able to, or is still can be used on a solar powered station versus needing to be connected to AC power. And this is the gauge actually that's currently at the Hawkeye and Liberty stations currently. But there'll also be increased soil moisture and temperature sensors. While many the Wise Road stations currently have those, most NDAWN stations in the western half of the state do not. And this will add those sensors to the stations that are upgraded, as well as snow depth sensors, which will be interesting to see in North Dakota, especially with the wind blowing as much as it does. but this will use a sonic sensor to measure the snow depth or the depth of the snowpack at the stations as well. So the benefits of this project, we'll be seeing additional winter precipitation data at the sites that are upgraded, and as well as the sites that already will have the heated rain gauges. Also, additional frost depth data at stations that, at the NDAWN stations that don't have those sensors already, and also additional stations on the periphery of the Wise Roads micronet. While the micronet itself and the core is a very high dense network, there are still voids on the edges of the network, which will be filled in, not to the level that the Wise Road stations are, but to a much better level than it currently is with this project. Other benefits, other than the flood prevention side of it, this data will be used in the drought monitor and creating that on a weekly basis, as well as for PRF programs, rainfall insurance, and also just more detailed weather information for locals and people who want weather data in the area. For example, here's a map showing rainfall from May 22nd to May 24th this year. And this shows what the map would have looked like without the Wise Roads project. You have a decent idea of what happened, rainfall, 1/4 to 1/2 inch across most of the area. But with the Wise Road stations, we're able to see a much more detailed map and see areas that received much more precipitation, where such as northwest of Williston, or in southeast Dickinson or southeast Dunn County, where there was very little precipitation compared to the rest of the county. And with the Wise Roads project and this Upper Missouri River Basin project, increasing the number and scope of stations in Western North Dakota, Daryl Richardson, director of NDAWN, said that Western North Dakota is going to have one of, if not the best weather networks on Earth. And combining that with the new radar in Williston, the Stanley Bowman radars from the Atmospheric Research Board, and the Minot and Bismarck radars from the Weather Service, there is abundant weather information available in Western North Dakota now that did not exist in previous years. And just quickly, I wanted to go through the weather data resources. I've been working for the last month or so putting together wiseroadsnd.com. This is the only website that has all of the currently installed Wise Road stations with weather maps created of them, current weather maps. And with this, you can also go and find the most recent camera images from each station and links to each station's individual data. There's also the NDAWN website, which has the 10 original Wise Road stations, and stationname.ndawn.org, for example, hawkeye.ndawn.org, which has a dashboard of the information for that individual station. wiseroadsnd.com, this is the website. When you go visit it, the homepage, bottom just has a map showing all the names and locations of the stations. The current weather tab will have 1, 2, and 7-day rain totals, as well as current weather conditions and the high and low temperature for that day. And these are updated every 10 minutes. Under the counties tab, there's a drop down. You can select any county part of the project. It has a map of the county showing all the locations and names of stations. And this will bring you to the dashboard for weather data or soil data if the station is equipped with soil instrumentation. And then the station photos tab has all the latest camera images, and this is sorted alphabetically by county. And all these images are at least 1080p and are all downloadable, as are the current weather maps. You can download those to your computer as well. If you aren't familiar, this is the NDAWN.org current weather page. If you go to NDAWN.org, brings you here. You can either look at the information in table view or in a map view, and then change the content by the scroll or the bar on the bottom of the page. And then the weather data dashboards. So if you go to the stationname.ndawn.org, for example, croft.ndawn.org, it'll bring you to a page like this. This has current weather information, as well as historical daily high and low rainfall, all the way back to when the station was installed, and the latest camera image updated every 10 minutes as well. And I just wanted to show this here. This compares the 2019 and 2020 September rainfall. And we've talked a lot how outlooks have changed from last year at this time to this year at this time. And just showing the weather, it's no different. Last year, 5 to 10 inches of rain fell pretty much everywhere versus last month, September 2020, hardly any rain, many places actually less than 1/10 of an inch. And it's another example of what the difference a year makes looking at, and the weather is just no different than anything else. And with that, that's basically all I have. If there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Shannon.